There's a certain chill that settles over a hearing room when a senator stops playing politics and starts calling out hypocrisy head on. That's exactly what happened when Senator Sheldon Whitehouse delivered a blistering rebuke to both the Justice Department and FBI leadership. What he was really talking about wasn't just false statements, it was the corrosion of trust in the institutions meant to protect democracy. His point hit deeper than party lines. If the truth no longer carries weight in our halls of power, what's left holding the system together? Subscribe if you care about holding leaders to the same standard, no matter their side.
And this goes back to the ranking member's comments about yesterday. To me, yesterday was an awful day in the history of this committee. It set new low after new low after new low. And I'm not going to talk about all of the new lows. I'm going to talk about one in particular. And that is whether anybody noticed the irony that the day before the United States Department of Justice arraigned a former FBI director for allegedly making untruthful statements to this committee, the Attorney General of the United States sat right there and made untruthful statements to this committee. And they weren't maybe untruthful statements. This wasn't a question of nuance. She made allegations about the ranking member and me having received political contributions from some, she said, Epstein close confidant. Well, guess what? That's actually checkable. There's a thing called the Federal Election Commission. The Federal Election Commission keeps a website that tracks all of our contributions. An intern at the Department of Justice could have checked to see that the allegation, I'll leave it to myself, that I had received campaign contributions from this individual, that was false. And it's not a maybe answer. It's a yes or no. Did I or didn't I? And there's an unimpeachable record that shows that what she said sitting right there was not true. If we are going to care about untruthful statements made by the Department of Justice and the FBI in this committee, let's not have this be yet another area where there are different rules for one party than for the other party. And just by the way, on that very subject, the other thing that the Attorney General did sitting right there was to strip all cover away from the untruthful statements that had been made to this committee by the current FBI director. You all heard him here. He said that he couldn't tell us about his grand jury testimony in the Mar-a-Lago case, where he first pled the Fifth, then got immunity, and then testified. He couldn't tell us what he testified to, he said, because the Department of Justice had sealed the testimony and because there was a court order barring him from doing that. And he actually identified which judge, the chief judge of the D.C. Federal District Court. Well, guess what? We know that since then, the chief judge of the Federal District Court has said that that was not true. He said specifically nothing prevented Director Patel from discussing his grand jury testimony. And yesterday, the Attorney General had the chance to say, you're right. We did seal the testimony in that matter. The Department of Justice did seal the testimony, and Patel's statement was true. Not about the court order, but at least it was sealed by the Department of Justice. She didn't say that. So now both his testimony that the DOJ had sealed his testimony and his testimony there was a court order barring his testimony are kind of demonstrably false statements to this committee. And then when he came back and we challenged him on those false statements, his second false statement was to say, I'm not going to answer any of those questions because my transcript of the grand jury testimony, I've worked with the DOJ to see that it is publicly released. Well, it either has been publicly released or it hasn't. It's a very simple distinction, yes or no. And we all know that it has not, in fact, been publicly released. And when we asked about that from the Attorney General, again, she left him high and dry and refused to say that anything had been publicly released, that there was any publicly released transcript. So yesterday stands in really stark contrast. I should say the day before yesterday stands in really stark contrast to yesterday. Yesterday, an FBI director was arraigned for making a false statement. The day before that, the Attorney General of the United States made arguably even falser statements. We'll see how the other case turns out. And she left the current FBI director completely exposed on his multiple false statements that his grand jury testimony in the Mar-a-Lago case had been sealed by the department, was under court order not to be released, and had since been publicly released as a transcript. I don't know if this committee is going to take itself seriously enough to treat false statements to this committee as serious matters, irrespective of who made them. But the contrast is really stark. Thank you, Chairman.
What Whitehouse was pushing back against was something far bigger than a single incident. It was the quiet normalization of double standards. When one official faces charges for dishonesty, while another gets a pass for the same behavior, it sends a dangerous message. Accountability depends on who you are, not what you've done. That kind of selective outrage tears at the fabric of justice. The senator's warning was clear. If Congress doesn't clean up its own credibility problem, no one else will. Subscribe if you believe truth should still matter in American politics. There's also something powerful about the timing of his remarks. A day after a former FBI director was arraigned, the Attorney General herself was accused of misleading Congress. Whether you agree with Whitehouse or not, it forces a sobering question. Are these hearings about oversight or performance? Have we turned truth-seeking into theater? The senator's frustration wasn't partisan, it was existential. If institutions start lying to the people meant to hold them accountable, oversight becomes an illusion. Subscribe if you want leadership that values transparency over theatrics. In the end, Whitehouse wasn't just venting, he was drawing a line in the sand. Either truth is sacred in our democracy, or it's a prop to be used when convenient. This hearing showed that the battle for integrity isn't between Democrats and Republicans, it's between honesty and spin. The fact that we even have to debate which side we're on says everything about where we are as a country. Subscribe if you believe restoring integrity starts with demanding the truth, not just from others, but from our own leaders.